think we're good. All right, Brad Young, president of the Frederick County Council and candidate for Frederick County Council at large.
Yes.
Brad, thank you for doing this.
You're quite welcome.
What's your passion?
My passion is education. I love working and inspiring young people. I've dedicated much of my life to that through coaching. When my kids were young, I coached their sports. I coached softball, basketball, and soccer. I taught my kids in Sunday school. I volunteered in their classes. Later on, I got involved by serving on the board of trustees of Frederick Community College, where I served for 15 years. Very proud that I was appointed by 3 different governors, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, Governor Schaefer, Governor Glendening, and Governor Ehrlich. I was the only person from Frederick Community College to serve as the chair of the State Community College Association. The only Marylander ever to serve as chair of the National Community College Association, so that was important to me. I also picked up teaching. I just finished my 24th year teaching at Mount St. Mary's, and that is one of my favorite things that I do in my life, showing up in that classroom every Tuesday and Thursday morning and seeing 20-some college students that are interested in hearing what I have to say, trying to shape their life and what they do. And so I've been very active in that. Myself, educationally, I did my graduated high school at TJ. I went on to FCC, where I got an AA, University of Maryland, a BA. I did a master's degree from Frostburg, and in the midst of COVID boredom, my wife said, "You got to find something else to do." So I started a doctorate and completed my doctorate from Hood College in 2024. And so education is, to me, the great equalizer in our country, and making sure that everybody has access to education is important. As you know, I volunteered. I've been on the board of I Believe in Me for the past 6 years, where we work with young at-risk youth in Frederick County. And again, for most of those young folks, education is going to be the difference maker, and having somebody that believes in them and has their back. And that's where the name I Believe in Me comes from. First, you have to get a young person to believe in themselves, but part of that is having somebody else that believes in them. So I spend a lot of my time on that. Obviously went on to spend 12 years on the school board and spent a lot of time trying to put policies in place that made our school system better, that made all kids feel welcome and accepted, that honored and rewards our teachers, our support staff, our administrators. So I could go on and on and on about education. It is my passion, and so that is always my number one issue.
To me, it is the difference between opportunity and not. That later on in life, no matter how many open doors you have in front of you, if you have not had access to, I'm going to use the word education, but it's such a broad understanding how the world works.
Yeah.
Not just the math and the reading but the science and the way to think about the world.
And don't get me wrong, college isn't the answer for everybody. And I know you come from a field where your dad had an HVAC company.
Yeah,
education means
he went to MC and he got his associates, and that's his only education.
Yeah, well, it is education as far as collegial, but it's education and learning HVAC. So again, I want to make sure that kids have the opportunity to get a trade or a skill that they can be employed. I give the Career and Technology Center a lot of credit, but unfortunately right now we have over 1,000 kids that are on waiting lists for programs they can't get in there. My oldest daughter went there and did the nursing program, and she went on to go to FCC. She completed her bachelor's degree. She completed her master's degree at the Mount. She's now director of nursing for the ED and pediatric ED at Frederick Health. Yeah. Very proud of her. But it was the CTC that really launched her into finding what her passion was. And that has done that for so many young students. And again, whether it's carpentry or auto mechanics or HVAC or nursing or beautician or whatever it might be, young people have to find their passion and then drive themselves and have somebody that helps them get to be the best at whatever that is.
So is it facilities? Is that the problem? Because it breaks my heart. I sit on all these PAC boards and all these different, CTC, the Technical Advisor Board, and all these things, and it constantly is, the constant refrain is, we got a lot more kids than we have space.
It is space, but part of it also is from a change that happened after COVID. We saw that a lot of young people after COVID said, I don't want to go spend $125,000 on a liberal arts degree, and then maybe get a job that pays $60,000, but I have $100,000 of debt. So now younger people are more focused on saying, give me a skill where I can graduate whatever that profession is without having a debt around my neck, and I can get a good job that has good benefits. One of the reasons I'm so proud to be endorsed by the IBEW 24 here local, they are doing that for so many young folks. A friend of mine, his son was having a hard time finding a job that he liked or one where he could support himself. He's a new member of the IBEW, making good wages, getting good benefits, but more importantly, getting a skill that he can use for the rest of his life and be proud of. And so he's found something that's done that. And so what we've seen is now more kids are doing that. And so that's created a greater wait list for these programs. So space is part of it, and we need to find ways to be innovative of finding other opportunities outside of that building. And that's working with the private sector, with the business sector. And IBEW is a great example. They're building a new training center in Frederick. And so maybe we can shift our electrical program over and work with them in that. Huge supporter of the CTC's Dynamic Automotive and Jose and Dwayne. And again, maybe finding ways to partner with their auto programs to get more spaces for folks to get those kinds of skills. A student that graduates with the auto program out there starts at $60,000, and my understanding is within a couple years and a couple of certifications can be over $80,000 in annual compensation.
It's the same thing in the HVAC world. I mean, you could go to FCC. You can go if the space is available. You can go to CTC and you can take HVAC classes, and then you can go to FCC and take HVAC 101, 102, and you're essentially a hireable person at that point. There's some certifications and some stuff we'd want you to go through, but
at that point, you would hire them and help them get those.
22, 23, 24, you're looking at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 is a reasonable amount of money you could make without any of the hundreds of thousands or dollars of debt and all this. And again, it goes back to that, just the opportunity that I wish we could, I wish every kid could have access to this. It seems to me that two things happen. One is the state, the leadership recognized this problem and said, we need to do this. So they created a blueprint. They started to mandate by 2030, we need a certain number of career-ready students. They created the career coaches, which I'm a huge fan of. So these are people that their job is to meet with middle schoolers and talk about the future.
So jumping back to, I told you I did my doctoral dissertation on the Links program at Frederick High.
Okay.
And one of the findings of my doctoral research was the advocate in that program was one of the key attributes that the graduates found helpful. Those advocates are very similar to what these career counselors do is they start working with them in the 9th grade to identify interests, make sure they're taking the right classes that identify with that, getting them in front of guest speakers that talk about what they're doing, going out and doing job visits, apprenticeships, but also then helping them either select a college or a program that would help them get to where they want to get to. And so I was very glad in the blueprint that career counselor position was put into place.
To me, what's needed, so besides more space, which I'll get back to, we need more buildings, but it's also navigators on both sides, navigators on the student side, so like these career coaches and these guidance counselors, that kind of idea. But also on the business side, because as small businesses, people they're buried, they're drowning, right? And all they're trying to do is just show up and keep everything together in the incredible economy that we have going on right now. And what they don't need is a chore.
Right.
What they need is a package that's built to say, hey, here's an explanation. And so one of my complaints is, for example, we have we got a grant from Maryland for $34,000 for a mobile training safety lab that's going around, and so that's awesome.
Yes.
But the next line item was a Maryland Works grant for $724,000 to Montgomery County to build a portal for students and for businesses.
Yeah.
So is that just we're going to forever deal with the fact that Montgomery County is going to get 1,000 times the funding that we
Yeah.
get? I mean, it seems unfair to me.
We all know how Annapolis works. It works on having votes, and Montgomery County has a lot more residents, therefore a lot more delegates and senators, and they can team up with PG County and Baltimore City. And yes, we're going to be fighting. At some point, we're going to be there and be that as well. But regardless of whether we have that or not, we have to set that aside and say we need to find a way to get this done, and that's what I'm dedicated to do. One of the other big issues we have is affordability, and we talk about a lot of ways of making either properties cheaper or getting costs down so people can get in. But I think it's twofold. It's not only doing that, but it's getting people's wages up. And so in having the opportunity for jobs that pay good salaries, afford them the opportunity of working and living here in Frederick County will make more affordable some of these properties. So again, it all ties together. What we're all looking for is quality of life. I've been blessed. I've never worked outside of Frederick County, and that's afforded me a lot of extra time to spend with my family, to do the coaching and the other things that I love. I talked about education. Obviously, I'm very passionate about my children and grandchildren and my wife. This summer, we're celebrating 40 years of marriage, which is doesn't seem possible. I don't feel 40 yet, but I'm very proud of my children and my grandchildren who all live here in Frederick County, and having them to be raised here and now raising their children, my grandchildren, is just an awesome thing for me to live with.
It seems rare.
Yeah, it is rare.
Right? It seems that most people, whether it's, if you're in your prime earning years, okay, you can afford to live here. But before that and after that, it seems like the increase in the cost of living is far outpacing our capacity to pay for those things. I mean, I came up the hill today, and gas is at
$4.50.
$4.50,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Which, the difference between $2.50 and $4.50 is, for some people is I can't.
If you're working down the road and commuting, you're filling your tank at least once a week. If an extra $20 or $30 on that tank 4 times a month is cutting something out of your life.
Correct, and it's that quality of life thing.
Right.
One of my very best friends who worked down in D.C., it's something like 4 hours a day that he was spending just traveling from there down. So going down to Shady Grove, getting on the metro, going down. And he was like, well, in order to hit the correct trains at the right time, I really have to leave at this time.
Leave earlier,
so
it's more than that.
I'm getting to work earlier than I need to.
Right.
But then I'm sticking around. And it's just...
It's a long day.
Yeah. And also, it's the time you don't spend with your 3-year-old. It's the time you don't spend with your family. And I really think that if we can have... And this is, part of the work that I do, is this idea of the pipeline between when we need to identify the jobs in Frederick County then we need to train the students and the returning student, people that are changing career and everything for those jobs. But there is also, you touched on this, the affordability part of this. So for me, it's a supply issue. The housing study just came out that said we need
16,000 new units.
But and then by 2030 it's like 20,000 or whatever it is. New homes. So how do we get there? Meaning, do we just hope for it?
Well, it's also sometimes like the cat chasing its tail. As we have grown in Frederick, we are now a more popular destination place. One of the stories, I coached a couple young girls on a softball team, and as soon as they graduated college, like, Coach, we're out of here. Frederick's boring. We're moving to D.C. Fast forward 10 years later, I see them like, hey, our friends say Frederick's the cool place, so we're moving back there. It's, again, we have a lot of folks that are coming here because it is a great place to raise your family. It is great quality of life. But what happens is as those folks come in here, as you said, if you understand economics, demand and supply, you've got more demand. If your supply is static, that's going to drive prices up. And so people are selling their houses in Montgomery County for a large amount, coming up here, putting cash offers and getting the home. So it is a need. There is a need for it. But on the other hand, we have to balance that new supply with making sure we have the roads and the schools and the parks and the police and the fire and all the infrastructure that goes along with it. I tell you, I drive around Frederick a good bit and have noticed more and more certain roads that I never would have waited on before. Coming down Market Street, usually I'll come down to Market and turn at 7th Street, 7th or 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be I go right up to the light. Now it might be a block and I wait 2 or 3 traffic lights to get there. Coming up East Street, the traffic, it has created problems, and our school system is full. With the exception of our northern part of the county, all the schools are at or near capacity. And so, and unfortunately, the way the funding works, you can't build it ahead of time. Say, let's put this new school there because they're getting ready to build those developments. The state doesn't fund that way. You have to have the demand before they allow you to build the school. And even with that, our capacity, it seems stupid. It's their process. Even without that, between the buildings that we have to rebuild right now, we're rebuilding Yellow Springs. We just rebuilt Valley and Green Valley. We're getting ready to open a new school, Linganore Creek, to alleviate the overcrowding at Oakdale Elementary. We have a new high school site down that end of the county because of the growth. But then we have Walkersville High School, Middletown, Catoctin, and Brunswick that all need to be rebuilt. And they're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 million apiece and up to replace a high school. We're looking at close to $160 million for the new Brunswick High School. And that's right now. By the time we get it built, my guess is it'll be over $200 million.
So you just named 7 or 8 full. If we could just snap our fingers, we would really need a full new facility. And you said 150, 200
and there's
million
more than that,
pop, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about
billions
of dollars, right?
Yeah.
So I assume this is something that Frederick County will never be able to do on their own. That this is building a school has to be a partnership with the state. Have we ever done it?
Well, no, all our schools are done that way. So schools basically in Maryland are supposed to be 50-50 between the state and the county.
Okay.
The problem is the state has not increased the amount that they're spending on capital in the past 10 years. And so therefore, we may be ready to go with our half, but they're not ready. And so Frederick County is one of a few counties that has forward-funded schools where we said we can't wait till the state has money, so we're going to go ahead and fund it. And then when the state has money, they'll kick it back in. So we've been ahead of the game on a number of the schools.
I'm assuming it's a good bet that they will. Like
it is
guaranteed that they will at some point.
But you have to put your money up front.
Yeah.
Now, we're one of a select group of counties in the United States that have a AAA rating by all 3 major bond rating agencies. That enables us to borrow money at the cheapest cost. Now, I've had people say to me, hey, since you got a AAA by everybody, just go out and borrow the $2 billion you need to build all the buildings. Well, if you did that, your bond rating would go down, your debt service costs would go up. So it's always a balance each year of looking at how much income does the county have, how much debt. So it's like your personal budget. If you over borrow in your personal budget, your credit score goes down. So when you go to get new debt, the cost goes up.
Service costs.
And so the county, in essence, has its credit score, which is done by Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And if that drops down to even to AA, then the cost to issue new debt goes up, which means your debt service goes up and you can borrow less. And so it's always a delicate balance of making sure that you can maintain that AAA status, but borrow as much as you can and make sure that you're getting those state matching funds.
Okay, so back to that supply for the housing. I keep hearing people, and especially candidates, say we need deeply affordable housing, which during the city race last year, that's what I was saying. You can't just say affordable housing and say $380,000. That's not That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a kid coming out of school or moving out of their parents, or a senior that's downsizing. That's not $400,000, right?
No.
So how do we get developers to build? I'm going to use again.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this phrase means, deeply affordable, but deeply affordable housing.
Right.
Or is it? Do you think it's the role of government? Meaning, should we be building some of this? How do we solve this?
Right. So the county did an extensive housing survey study last year, and part of it's a multi-pronged. There's no one fix to it. So part of it is encouraging or requiring builders to build multi-family homes in their developments. Obviously, if I were a developer and I had a tract of land and I could build all mega million homes and there's buyers for that, why would I try to build an apartment or a condo building or something, where there's more homes that are there. And
Well, we can tell them to.
We can work on regulations to do that. One of the other approaches that we're looking at, or not looking at, we're actually employing, is we're using our government ground to build some of the affordable housing. So one of the new projects will be, we purchased the Prospect Center, which was the old United Healthcare State Farm building, and there was an extra ground there, and so we put out an RFP, and we're going to build some more of that deeply affordable housing that's there. In addition, we have other properties. We're rebuilding the Senior Center on Taney Avenue, which will include 60 places where seniors can live that are much more affordable than other places that are out there.
Okay.
It is a huge problem because there are a lot of folks that are ALICE households in Frederick County, which is asset limited, income constrained, but employed folks that are there. When you go up and down all those beautiful new apartments up and down East Street and behind the old Coke plant, they're almost $3,000 a month for rent. And so if you look at, as a financial planner, I encourage people not to have their rent or mortgage be more than their 30% of their take-home pay. So if somebody starts at $60,000, and so that's $5,000 a month, their take-home pay is $3,000, 30% of that's $900. That does not get you an apartment, does not get you a house. And so it becomes very tough for folks to do that. Again, I was very blessed. I graduated college. Within 1 month, I started my first job, got married, and bought my first house, a townhouse in Frederick. And it was a stretch back then, honestly. We had weeks where we were trying to figure out how we're going to make this payment and pay for the electric, started having kids, and we made it through. But it was not easy. And so, again, I have great sympathy for our young folks to say, how can you afford that without having to work 2 or 3 jobs to do that?
I mean,
and sacrifice
I did it by, I had 5 roommates.
Yeah.
I mean, I piled in all my Marine buddies and stuff. Like, everyone lived in the house, and that was the only way that we could, because I was also where I
hope you had a cleaning lady.
Initially, well, I mean, I lived there, and I like to clean. But it seems to me, and I actually said this in one of the other interviews, that I was talking to a guy that does a lot of wonderful work inside immigration. He's an attorney. He does immigration rights work, and we were another thing that I'm very passionate about. So we were just kind of talking about the environment, and he said that the thing that surprised him the most was how quickly people are willing to pull the ladder up behind themselves in any given situation.
Yes.
And so I see that a little bit here in the housing world, where all the rules are written, and we even talk about this with, there's people are putting up proposals that say if you've owned your home for a certain period of time, your taxes should go down, or things like that, which simply solidifies the people that have already been able to get into home ownership, which is a lot of the voters, right? Frederick County is a predominantly
older county.
What do they call it in owner-occupied housing?
Yeah.
So how do you have this conversation with people? Because it's not really in their best interest, right? Because their best interest is property values to continue to go up, even though it doesn't really mean anything that your property value goes up, because if you sold it, where would you live? Not here, right? But they like that the property values go up. At the same time, they complain that their taxes are going up, even though their properties are going up. But it's an unrealized. How do you have this conversation with people that say we need to fundamentally think about housing differently?
It is a tough conversation, and you're right. In the United States, being a financial planner, the major 2 places that people build wealth are in their retirement plan and in the equity in their home, and so a lot of folks live on that. And you have lots of clients that, again, have lived here 30 years. They decide to sell, and they go to somewhere where it's less expensive to live, so they cash out their equity, buy a smaller house with cash somewhere else, and are able to bank out some of that money from the equity that they made there. But it is a tough conversation, and trying to find, again, when you sit down with somebody, find something that they can afford, and also looking at how do you get their income to go up, and make sure that they're doing it where they can have quality of life and they haven't overstretched themselves. Part of the reason we got in the financial crisis in 2010 was because we made it too loose and too easy for folks to borrow money and finance their property 100%. Again, as a financial planner, I always love when folks can put 20% down. But as you said, if you're looking at a $500,000 house, that's $100,000, and unless you are lucky, or you're making a lot of
your
money.
parents.
It's tough to do that, or you have a parent or grandparent that can do that. It's very tough to do. So we do have to look at it differently. We also, I would tell you, I noticed the change in students after COVID and not wanting to go to the traditional liberal arts schools. I also noticed a change that when I ask my students who wants to own their home, far fewer are saying that that's a goal that they have, and whether that's because they just don't think it's achievable, or they want the mobility of saying, I don't want to be tied down. I'm going to be able to move around by not owning that home. And there are advantages of renting that, something breaks, you call the landlord and they have to fix it and you don't have to pay all the other things. But I'm finding that a smaller group of the folks that I talk to are actually having home ownership as a goal that they have.
Well, it's the same with cars, right?
Yeah.
So transportation. That I was just talking to Eric Smothers, who's running for District 1 about this yesterday, that the next generation doesn't care about driving the way that we cared, right? And to me it is, I don't know if we could have seen this coming, but we should have seen this coming.
Mm-hmm.
And to me there seems to be billions of dollars that are being spent on automobile infrastructure, that if we simply took that same amount of money and added twice the number of buses, we can get the same amount of people around.
Right.
But there's this stigma around it that people the buses are for poor people. I mean, this is something that has been said to me, which is just...
there is that stigma. And I'll say I'm very proud here in Frederick County that we recently took a vote to dedicate a portion of our recordation taxes to our transit system, 4% of those taxes, which will enable us to keep transit free.
Okay, did you hear that? Transit's free in Frederick County. Every time
County
anybody
it's free.
says this,
Yeah.
it's free. It's free. Transit's
There's
free.
no
Every
cost.
bus, it's free.
Not only the buses, but if you're a senior and you can't get to the bus, we have services that will pick folks up and take them to their doctors, take them to their appointments. So that accessibility is so important because, again, if you don't have that car and you need to get somewhere and you're not close to that bus stop, you need to have resources to do that. And so we need to continue to expand that. Again, we're not throughout the whole county. In the last few years, we added runs up to Emmitsburg and Thurmont, which is some of our areas where folks don't have access to that, and a lot of their doctors are in Frederick, and down to Brunswick Neck Corridor, Jefferson, Brunswick Corridor, but we don't run down towards Newmarket, Mount Airy.
Yeah.
So there's lots of additions that we can do, but we do have services if you need to get from one place to the other.
This is yet another reason why that development, that more housing should happen centralized.
And it is.
We shouldn't be building another. I grew up in Boundary Creek. I grew up in Kingsbrook. It was wonderful. We were one of the first. We were one of the first houses built there, and it was all trees and cows and fields, and now it's all houses. But it was far away from. They had to build out all the infrastructure,
right.
So then there's cost there, right? So all that water and sewer and all that roads and everything. But is this something? But actually, I don't think there has been any other developments, right, outside of the incorporated.
Most of them are down in the Linganore, Oakdale, Urbana area, and they were approved by administrations long ago.
Yeah.
Again, people think you give approval to a development that it's going to happen tomorrow. Usually, it takes 6 to 10 years because they have to go through the process of planning it, developing it, funding it, and then constructing it. So it takes a long time for those things to happen.
Do you guys on the council ever think, well, I'm not going to have to deal with that. That's the next guy's, the next gal's problem?
I don't, because I know I'm going to be here. Now, I know maybe somebody won't yell at me for it, but I'm going to be living here, so I do deal with the consequences. And I know people get upset over different votes. I do think about that. How is this going to impact my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, because I expect that we'll be here for many generations. I'm 10th generation. My grandkids are 12th generation. Yeah. So we've been here a bit, but I do look at what's the impact of future generations and doing the right things.
So I do. I want to get there. I want to ask you about what it's like to grow up, and have your father be mayor and stuff like that. I want to get to that. But you touched on this 6 to 8 year period of time for development cycle, right? Which, I come from the trades. I have some kind of intuitive understanding of this. But often we, as residents, we see something happening and then we get a bunch of people that show up and go,
Right.
"Oh my God,
Right.
next door,
Didn't
they're
know
starting to
anything
put in
about
this
that.
big building,
Yeah,
right?"
right.
And I think, and I've said this a couple times, I do think that there's some responsibility that lies on us as residents to be informed about this and to be aware of this. But at the same time, they're not. No one's yelling at their neighbors, going, "Why didn't you? Well, hey neighbor, why didn't you tell me that was happening next to
Right.
you?" They come in and yell at you guys for this. So, how do we fix this? You kind of got to be there the 3 years before at that meeting to say, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
But, and I'm not, and I've said this a bunch of times, I don't think that the county or the city is I think they're doing all the things that are legally required, meaning you put it in the paper and you have a public meeting, but there's like 2 people at that public meeting or 5 people, because that it's unsexy. The zoning board of appeals
they haven't seen the bulldozer.
meeting.
Yeah.
That these are, it's such nuanced, and so it seems to me that there are a bunch of people that, no matter what the development is, whether it's houses or the data centers or any of these pieces, that are like afraid of what's happening. And I can, again, in my brain, I go, well, you should have been paying attention 3 years ago, but also it is incumbent upon our local government. So how do we solve this? People don't know about it till it's really too late for them to do anything about it.
Well, it's communication. As you said, we try to be proactive in getting the word out there. We have email services where people can sign up to be notified of different hearings, using social media to get it out there, using the county's website, as you said, there are legal requirements of posting in the newspaper. Who reads that
And a
anymore?
sign,
And a sign out there.
property.
The signs are an effective way. They try. I can tell you that our planning department is very cognizant of trying to make sure they put signs in high traffic places where people that will be impacted by whatever it is that they're doing will notice those. And people do stop and look at the sign and then say, hey, should I be? Sometimes seeing that sign is almost like getting an envelope in the mail that says IRS. You're going to open it up and see what it is.
And I do appreciate, I know the city's doing this, I don't know if the county's doing this, where it's like a giant blue with a P on it for planning, or a giant, as opposed to, I remember growing up, it was a white and it just had a bunch of text on it. And it was, you didn't really, who knows what that is. But now I go, oh, that's planning. That means they're going to do some kind of land use.
Right.
I mean, I obviously, I live in this world, so I know what it means. But it would indicate to somebody, oh, something's about to be different here that a sign doesn't. But I don't know, is it enough?
I can tell you could stand on the corner and dance and sing and yell in that neighborhood for 50 days in a row, and there'll be somebody that you didn't reach. So no matter what you do, there are going to be folks that don't reach. They don't see it until the impact is happening. And again, I don't know that there is a fix for that. I think the fix is for us as residents to be more attuned to looking at what's going on and talking and attending meetings. As you said, our meetings are generally, if we don't have anything controversial, we'll have 2 or 3 people sitting there, and it's the same 2 or 3 people that'll be there every time. Then all of a sudden you have something that a group of people are interested in, and the room's overflowing.
Yeah.
And as soon as that issue is resolved, whichever way it goes, the room is empty again. Yeah. And that was true when I was on the school board. That was true when I was on the board of Frederick Community College. So that's not something that's new, that's changed recently. But there is also much more access to information today. So if you want to be proactive to go out and do that. And I will say, get to know your elected officials. I can tell you, I know every elected official in Frederick County, Republican or Democrat, and there's not a one that I can say is unapproachable or would be unwilling if you had a question to reach out and say, hey, what's going on here that I should know about? They would respond to you. And most of them have staff that will do that as well.
Yeah.
And again, that's whether it's a congressman, whether it's your councilman, your county executive, your mayor, your burgess, whoever it is. They generally want to get that information out there. And so sometimes you have to be a little proactive in order to get that. But I think, again, it's our responsibilities as residents to do that.
So how do you deal with that? You feel like you did a good job. You feel like you did all the things you had to do, and I know you, and I know that you think you're doing the right thing, and I think generally people like to think that they're the good person, that everyone's trying. people like Mason, who I have a lot of policy disagreements
Right.
with on the county council. I also think that he's trying to do what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with people saying that you're like a terrible human being for these things?
Yeah.
How does that? Is it just you have to let it roll off your back, or
You do, and again, obviously, I've been involved with politics since I was 4. Dad was elected alderman when I was 4. He was mayor when I was 8 to 24. So, and I would say even back then, there were folks, they didn't have as much platform like social media to
Sure.
get it out there, but you
they
would
had
see
to
it
actually stand on the corner and yell?
and say it and yell at you, or they'd send a note in the mail. Or one night I woke up and we had a bonfire out in front of our house
Oh, my
that was
God.
going on. We had windows shot. We had things. It happens. It's there. What I learned as a young person, and this is not just with political life, but with your work life and everything, is you have to control the controllables. And when you do that and you make the right decision, you can sleep at night. I've made decisions in my life before where 10 years later I look back and say, maybe knowing what I know now, I would have made a different decision. But when I make my decision, I make it with all the knowledge that I have available to me, and listening to that, I make the best decision, and then I leave it at that. Now, if something changes later and we have the opportunity to revisit that and I have new information, I'm always willing to do that. But I can say I don't sweat after the decision has been made, because I know that I took all the information I had, made the best decision, and I live with it and move on. And I know my dad used to, back when he was mayor, he had this cartoon that he kept in his desk, and it had a mayor with his feet up on the desk. And he said, I didn't do this for the women's club this year. I didn't do this for Rotary. I didn't do this for that. And the punchline was, I'm a shoo-in for re-election.
Mm-hmm.
So it says you can, if you don't do anything to make anybody mad, they may not love you, but they're not going to vote you out. Whenever you make a decision that is consequential in any way, there are people, and I've had over this data center, people that have been my supporters for 20 years that now won't vote for me. And I understand that, and that's their right. And that's, again, I can't change that. All I can do is outline to them why I made my decision, and that I did it with the best interest of what I think is in the county and our future. And again, if they disagree with that, then it's their right to do that. But it's a process, and you just have to get used to that.
So you've been in politics for a while.
Yeah.
Was it Trump? I mean, was it like this prior? I remember the Tea Party years, the 2010, 2012, where, there was some vitriol. There was some, Jan Gardner's an evil person. I remember it. Or is it the platforms? You know what I mean? Like, is it just that people have more access to it now?
I think social media has definitely
We've always been terrible.
changed it. Well, I think I think a lot of that has always been there. Just social media has given them a platform to release it.
Yeah.
And so there's always been, if you were mad in 1980, you'd had to write a letter, or again stand on the street corner and yell and scream. Today, you can go be a keyboard warrior, put something on Facebook and send it out there and not own it. So I do think that social media has had a huge impact, not only on politics, but on our country, because everybody has their opinion and most people are willing to share it. And unfortunately, many people don't go fact check things before they post or repost things. And that's something I think we all have to take more responsibility of.
Is it a critical mass, though? Have we gone too far? Is it just
we're
never going back?
Now, you know what? Things always tend to act like a pendulum, and politics has always been that way. We'll swing one way, and people will get tired of it, and they'll swing the other way. So I do think at some point, what happens, though, is the people that get tired of it just get off those platforms and say, you know what, or they start blocking the people that post 16 times every day and fill their timelines with stuff that's there. Say, you know what, I'm just going to block that. And honestly, I'm on social media. I got on social media more to keep track of the kids that I've coached and the young students that I've taught. I love hopping on there and seeing that somebody's gotten a new job, or they've gotten married, or bought their first house, or had their first kid, or all these types of things. Honestly, I find out more about what's going on in our community through Facebook and social media than I do through other ways. When somebody that I know passes away, I generally either find out it through social media or somebody contacting me than waiting to see the obituary
Yeah.
printed in the newspaper, which is it's a change, and we're there. But again, I think there are a lot of positive aspects of it, but there are a lot of negatives where everybody has the opportunity as soon as something happens to share their opinion, and then it can go viral.
Yeah, I am definitely in the camp that the positives do not outweigh the negatives.
Right.
There's a lot of people I get to say happy birthday to
Yeah.
that I would not have, right? That I don't see or I haven't seen in a long time. So that is a beautiful thing.
That helps me out a lot.
I don't know if it's worth the cost to us. So okay, so the boomers, the Gen X's, the millennials, we're all like I don't see how we come back from this. But what do we do moving forward? I think that the governor just signed something that said no cell phones in schools.
Right.
I'm going to go on a limb here. I assume you agree with this?
I'm fine with that. Look, I talked about that when I was on the school board. Now, I'll tell you that part of the time that I was on the school board, we had several mass school shootings like Columbine and Parkland. And we had parents come and say, look, you can have your policy. I want my kid to have their phone, so if something like that happens here, I can get in touch with them. And I understand that. I know if, now my kids are through school, but when they were there, now my grandkids are in school. If something happens, I would think that's important. Now, I think you can have a policy to say you have it on you, but it's only turned on in case of emergencies that are there. But
a teacher friend of mine said, she comes over and said, oh, the kid's on their phone. She looks at the phone, and it's the parent texting them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That it's not even like the parent knows they're at school, obviously.
They do, and then the kid feels obligated to respond because the parent may worry. And so, again, I think that is a societal thing that we have to get used to and say, don't be doing that. But security is a concern for a lot of people with the amount of school shootings that we've had. People want their child to have access to be able to call 911 if they hear shooting or to be able to get hold of them. So I think having smart policies to say you cannot use them during the school hours unless it's for an emergency. So if you have it on you, you can use it for an emergency, but an emergency isn't, I need to talk to my parent about what time practice is going to be tonight.
An emergency is defined by the school system, not by not by the 12-year-old.
Right, and I'll tell you, in teaching at college, in my class, the students don't use their phone during class because I lay that out as an expectation in the beginning. That if you have something that's that important that you need to be on the phone, excuse yourself from the class, take care of it, and then come back. And so I think that, again, we're all married to these things and what's going on. And again, I would say I get a lot more done by having it than I did before.
Yeah,
being able to answer some emails,
I run my business out of a
sitting in
phone,
the park. They have a lot of valuable aspects, but they also take away from a lot of things. And I've noticed that a lot of young folks are not able to carry conversations as much because they don't have dialogues. I used to kid when I was coaching at Hood College, the girls, that when they get married, they're going to do their proposals by texting and saying, hey, will you marry me, and go back and forth. And they're used to that. And it's funny because I have folks that I know if I want to talk to them, I have to call them. Others, if I want them to get a respond, I have to text them. Others, I need to send them an email. So everybody's different in how they respond to things, and you just have to know your audience and who you're working with. I was with a client this morning that was in her 90s, and she was having email issues, and she just doesn't understand them that well, but she's trying to at 90, trying to do that. But it's a totally different world for some people. Yeah. I used to, joke my grandmother, rest in peace, was a great lady, but every time we had a thunderstorm, her VCR would turn off and we'd have to go reset it. And now I kind of feel like her because we've got 3 remotes, and like, how do you turn the dang TV on and get to this channel and do that? So it's like, and then I can call one of my grandkids, or here, pop, here's how you do that, and right there it is.
Well, I mean, this is exactly the point, that they're digital natives, right? Yeah. So the world is and will be this digital world, and so we want them to be equipped to navigate that world, but at the same time, we're handing them habits that are, I mean, just the destruction of our attention spans, that we're just training. And, I think about this from the, my time in the military, where we just over and over again, we would do things that if you do it enough, right, you get muscle memory to it. So we would practice, so that when you're in that situation where you need to depend on your training, you have your training. But that psychological trick or whatever works with a phone.
Yeah.
Meaning, the more you do things 10 seconds at a time,
Right.
you're training yourself to think in that way. And I just think it's kind of one of the roles of whether it's government or the school system to be
The parents.
I'm saying I think again, I'm not putting this on you, but I'm saying for me it is that the school system needs to go, okay, here's what the reality is.
Right.
This is harmful, and so we need to create an environment in which I don't really care if your parent lets you have your cell phone when you're 15 years old. From when you're in school, you need to be learning how to think deeply through these things, and your access to this is hindering that because those first years, they're so formative, to who you're going to be.
And it's gotten even worse because of AI now, because with AI, you can not have to think. You can say, tell me what I should put down for this. And so, again, a lot of the responsibility falls on the shoulders of parents. And again, the school system, government can play roles into that. But if we do something, on the peripheral and they go back home and it's not reinforced, as you said, with that muscle memory, it's not going to stick. And so we all have to work collectively with our children, with my grandchildren, with kids that I'm teaching and mentoring to make sure they're doing the right things and understand the importance of doing that. And you hope that they can get through that and use those tools to supplement and help them, but not rely on those to be their answers.
Okay, so we're talking about those formative years. So I've got to ask.
Yeah.
So what, Frederick is a beautiful, wonderful place. I love it so much. But we almost have 100,000 people, right? We almost have, got 200 plus 250,000.
300,000
in the county, right? Yeah. So it was not like that in 1975, right? It was not like that in 1970. So what was it like to be a part of politics? You said your father was the mayor from you were kind of a teenager,
From
right?
8 to 24.
8 to 24, right?
So pretty much my whole educational time.
But also the whole world was just tiny. What was it like to be the son of the mayor?
On top of having my dad as mayor, my mom was an elementary school principal, and she was very active in the community as well. And so, and thank God we didn't have cell phones back then, because I probably did some stupid things that would be recorded on videos and used against me later. But no, it was a environment where I would hop on my bike at 14th Street and ride out to the Frederick Town Mall, which was a 25, 30-minute ride. You would turn on the corner where the old state police barracks was, which is where the Wawa is now. And then you would see nothing till you saw this big building out there, which was this new mall that opened up. And so I would be all around town. It was a very safe thing to do. I would walk around, talk to neighbors, and you didn't have that. But I knew when the street lights came on, then you have to head back to home base and be in. And of course, my mom generally was home at that point because she had finished her day at the school, but she was usually working on things and getting ready for the next school day. And Dad was probably out at meetings and doing his thing. But yeah, I would be at places and say, oh, there's the mayor's son, or there's Carol Young's son. And so it was a very I would say under the microscope kind of upbringing that were there, which had its good parts. I have a lot of great mentors that I had in my life from folks that were around my neighborhood and folks that I got to know, like Doc McClellan and Jim Grimes and Charlie Smelser, and folks that were involved in politics that gave me an opportunity. I told you I was on the board of FCC, and that was at the age of 27, which was unheard of at that point. And that came about because I worked for a bank, and I was at a party, and Senator Smelser was there. And I heard him talking to somebody that somebody had retired from the FCC board, and he was looking for somebody from the Newmarket area. Well, I happened to live in Newmarket at that time, and my ears perked up. And so I fired off a letter, and I called Doc, and next thing I'm appointed to the FCC board at 27. I think the next youngest person was in their 50s at that point. And so, again, there's a lot of folks that gave me an opportunity to be exposed and do things that so it had its perks and its benefits. I always say one of the greatest benefits when he was mayor was he got a gold pass that you could go to the movies for free. So we did a lot of movies. To walk in and not have to pay for the movies. You had to pay for your popcorn and all that, but gave you the opportunity to do things. But it really exposed me to a lot of good things about our community, exposed me to a lot of good people, it also exposed me to the fact that there are people that will not like you because of it, and to prepare you for that. Now, I would tell you that fast forward, when I told you I got married when I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, we started dating when we were 16, so she had seen the amount of time in the political scene. And she pretty much said when we got married, we had an agreement. We could either get married and have kids and do the traditional thing and stay the hell out of politics, or if you want to do politics, we're not having kids because that's going to take your time, and I'll support you in that. And obviously, I wanted to have kids and chose that route. So fast forward now, 2010, my youngest daughter at that point's like 16. And she's like, hey, why don't you run for the school board? That would be a thing that you could do that won't take a huge amount of time. It did take a lot of time.
I was going to say.
But she didn't know that. So we got on that, and I did that, and I ran 3 terms. And so in 2020, COVID was going on. I said to my wife, look, I'm not running for the school board again. 12 years is enough, and I'm not going to do that. She goes, well, what are you going to run for? I said, well, we have the agreement. I wasn't going to run for anything. And she said, well, the kids are grown now, and we need people like you that are level-headed and can find ways to work with people in politics so you can do that. Well, I started looking. I had zero desire to leave Frederick, so that ruled out running for Congress or running for delegate or senator. And I had lots of people trying to convince me to run for delegate or senator, but that requires being in Annapolis for 3 months that I don't see my kids or my grandkids and so forth. So I'm like, that's not going to happen. So I looked at it, and county council was the perfect fit for me. I live in District 5, which is a heavily Republican district, and so the odds of winning there were not great. I had already been elected 3 times countywide on the school board, so I thought I will run at large, and that worked out. And so here I am, and that's kind of, again, if you don't like me, you can blame my wife for encouraging me to run for it. So
noted.
Yeah.
So you talked about having, I think you said these perks, right?
Right.
It's the word. In my mind, these are opportunities that come from who you know. So much of this world is who you know, not what you know. Did you feel a sense of responsibility? One of the things my father used to say to me when I was growing up was, because I always used to complain that I was like, I feel like you're holding me to a different standard.
Right.
And he would say, yeah, because you are going to have opportunities that other kids don't have.
Right.
And so it is my job as your parent to hold you even when you were younger. Now, as I've gotten older, we've had some disagreements on how much he held me to, but if you've met my father, it was a high standard. So, which again, I'm blessed that he did. I am who I am because of it. But I felt a deep sense of responsibility when I was growing up. Did you feel that when you were growing up, that it was I'm not going to use the word different, but you have opportunities. So
I did, because in some ways, but I'll tell you, my parents relieved that from me, and I'll explain. I had other people to say, hey, you got to really watch what you do because your dad's a mayor and your mom's a principal, and if you do something, it's going to reflect upon them. But both my parents said to us as kids, hey, you know what, you be you. Don't ever not do something because of how it's going to reflect on us. Do it because of how it's going to reflect on you.
Yeah.
And so that took that pressure off me to say, like, if I'm going to screw up, it's on me, and I know I'm going to have to own that, and they're okay with it. And so, fortunately, I didn't screw up too bad. But part of it was taking that pressure off of saying, look, you're a kid, you're going to do things, but don't not do something just because you're worried about how it's going to impact me, worried about how it's going to impact you. I work with a lot of youth, and I'm always trying to open doors for young people. But what I'll tell them is, I can open the door, but once you get in there, you need to be responsible and make sure you earned getting in that door. And I've had kids that have not done that, and I've had many that have done that. And so, again, what I encourage young people to say is, most people want to help young people and do things to do that. Take it seriously and responsibly. Be thankful for it. Thank them. But also, the best way you can thank them is by doing the right things once you get in that door that they've opened for you. I've connected lots of young people. I can't tell you how many letters of recommendations I write a year. It's in the hundreds.
Sure. Yeah.
For scholarships, for jobs, you name it, that's there. And so I do that because I want to give those folks the opportunity to improve themselves. But I've had 45 interns over the years, and I've had interns that have had an intern that went on to be the CFO for the Washington Redskins. I have one now that's the portfolio manager for T. Rowe Price. one is a president of a corporation in Virginia, attorneys, teachers, you name it on down the line. And so what I would always try to impress on them during that internship was the responsibility of doing the right things, finding the passion that you have in life, and being the best person at whatever it is that you end up doing.
To me, it not just kind of the keep your nose clean part of it, but a lot of it was the responsibility to share that opportunity, which, you kind of were talking about with all these internships and things you do for kids that I just, that it's not just the, maybe it's from the Bible where it goes, for those much is given, much is required,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And it is I also, and I talk openly about this all the time, every door that I reach for has opened in my life. And it's part of why I joined the Marine Corps, because I was like, it was something I had to earn. I was growing up and I was like, well, it seems easy, and so let me go do something really hard so I can kind of prove this to myself. But what I have turned that into is, well, now I try to bring people that don't look or sound like me, don't have that opportunity with me through those doors. And to me, that is really the responsibility that opportunity brings. So now on the later end of life, and I just asked this of Eric yesterday, because he spent 40 years, or 30 years. He was the guy that if the chopper landed, and if you flip over on 15 and state chopper, he's the medic that hopped out. So go, okay, the end of it. You, successful business. Your wife has a successful business. Why are you subjecting yourself to this? I'm young and dumb, right? Like I want to change the world, and I some of the people that are running for office, we are, we're young enough that it's because we want to push the boulder up the hill and over the other side.
Yeah.
But why are you subjecting?
So it goes back again to how I was brought up. I was brought up with expectations of giving back to the community. I've talked before. I think the first service project that I can remember was after the flood in '76. Dad took us into what was the Tivoli, now the Weinberg Center, and we were shoveling mud out of the Oregon pit and taking the wheelbarrows up and getting it in trucks and working on that. So he had us involved in things. I had an uncle, Edgar Brownlow, who got us involved in Sertines, which was the junior Sertoma, and doing projects. We'd put the flags up and down Market Street for various holidays to honor our veterans for that. And so I just always had that expectation. And I'll say again, my mom was a great role model in caring deeply about education and her students and giving back. And so I've just always had that servant heart of wanting to serve and help others. And so to me, today I could walk away. I don't need to work again. I don't need to do anything. But I still have that passion to use the skills and energy that I have to benefit our community, but mostly to help others. I was very blessed during COVID to work with IJ Hill and I Believe in Me to do food distribution on Route 40. Over 18 months, we did a food distribution every Monday. I was there for 6 hours setting up, serving 400 cars and breaking down that. We did that for 18 months. Having the opportunity to do those things to me really is just, what I expect that somebody should do for the community. I'm always looking for ways. Frederick is so blessed that we have so many nonprofits and so many philanthropic people that give back to our community. I work with I Believe in Me. I've worked with on the board of Love for Lackland, their story, but Blessings in a Backpack, COIP, Sleep in Heavenly Peace. You go on down the line of all these different nonprofits that help our community, from the United Way to the Rescue Mission. You can just go on and on and on. So to me, it's about making the community a better place for others, and having been blessed, as you said, I almost every door that I've ever opened, I've been successful. My challenge wasn't going to Marines, it was starting the doctoral program. I'll tell you that my mom, in her career, the one thing that she never accomplished between having to work and raise 4 boys and what she was getting paid, never had the opportunity to pursue her doctorate that she wanted to. So I kind of thought this would be a neat thing to do to honor Mom in getting the doctorate. And so in 2020, when I went from 110 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour, I thought, let me do the letter. And I half anticipated I'd get back, hey, thanks, Mr. Young, for applying, but you're not, worthy of the program. So I get back the acceptance letter. So the next major decision is, do I actually do this or not? So I did. And it actually in 2020, 2021, it was great because not much was going on.
Yeah.
It was a great diversion. I was working on things. Within 2022, president of the school board, running my business. In the spring, I do 100 and some tax returns, teach at the Mount, and run for county council and write a 300-page paper. But once I commit to something, I get it done. I got it done, and so I think in life, when you try things and you do things, you do your best to get them done. Sometimes it's not achievable, and then you have to own it and say, look, I bit off more than I can chew there. I did my best, and I'll move on to the next thing that's there. And that's how you approach life.
So you've done a lot.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite questions is, because this is to get to kind of how people think, is tell me about a mistake you made, how you got through that, how do you deal with, because no one's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Now, while I've had some people say that they don't make mistakes, I don't believe them. So tell me about a mistake you made and what kind of resulted from that.
So we'll go back to COVID. When I was on the school board in 2020, and we're talking about now February-ish of COVID starting, we're having all these people tell you about what can happen and convincing you to shut the school system down and go virtual for that. And that's the decision we made. And in hindsight, I wish we hadn't. I think we could have worked through that and kept students in school and found ways to do it safely. I'll tell you, I was scared at the beginning of COVID. I have mild asthma, and I was worried sick about getting COVID because there's no worse.
Man, you were right in the.
There's no worse feeling than when you can't get a full breath of air into your lungs, and so I'm thinking if I get that, that would be scary. And so I thought, again, with all the information I had at the time, it was the best decision. I think in hindsight, it was not the right decision. In the fall of that year, we were one of the first school systems to send students back, first school systems to reinitiate sports and activities. What you can see in hindsight is that COVID had a great impact on a lot of kids who lost out on a year of learning and a year of socializing and being with other students, that it's going to have a detrimental impact for many years on those students. So again, I think when I made the decision, I made it with the facts and the knowledge that I had. In retrospect, I think it was a mistake, and we should have found ways to continue to keep students engaged and in schools, and I'll own that decision.
Okay, so opposite of that, and maybe you already answered it with your doctorate, but what's something you're proud of?
I'm proud. I'm very proud of my family. Again, my wife, who we've been together for 44 years, we met in the 11th grade at putt-putt. I always say I was working and she was a customer stalking me out, but no, it was a mutual thing. We met there at putt-putt golfing games on Thomas Johnson Drive. We've raised three beautiful, successful daughters. My oldest daughter is director of pediatric and the ED departments at Frederick Health. My middle daughter works with my wife at her business and will take that over. And my youngest daughter is working very successfully in IT for a defense contractor. And now it's the grandkids. I love my kids, but I love my grandkids even more, having those 6 young grandchildren. I made a decision 3 years ago to quit working Fridays and babysit the grandkids. So every Friday is Grandkid Day. Right now we have 3 that are not in school. As soon as school's out, we'll have all 6. So we try and find things to do on those days, whether it's going and enjoying one of our beautiful parks, going to the zoo, going to a movie, just playing outside, playing games, whatever it is. They are my pride and joy, and my there's no more feeling of being proud than seeing your children succeed and do good things, and that is my source of pride.
Wonderful.
Yep.
All right. How do people get a hold of you?
You can contact, number one, you can get information on my website, which is brad-young.com. You can, on Facebook, there's a Brad Young County Council page, or my personal page. My cell phone number is 240-674-0515. My email address for the campaign is friendsofbradyoung.com, or the county email is byoung@frederickcountymd.gov.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
You're quite welcome. Thank you, Dave.